Hello people of YouTube, it's Deepak here, and welcome to DCS World 2.9.19 and Eagle Dynamics A-10C II Tank Killer Module. Welcome to Tutorial 9, Unguided Bombs. Today I'm going to demonstrate the deployment of unguided bombs in the A-10 in both CCIP and CCRP modes, and in the case of CCIP we will demonstrate manual mode and also consent to release mode, which has two different submodes. CCIP, of course, being constantly computed impact point. This is where you have symbology on the HUD with a pipper. You place the pipper on the target, press the pickle, and the bombs should hit that point on the ground, all being well. And CCRP being constantly computed release point. This is usually done in a level attack where you don't necessarily have the nose of the aircraft pointed towards your intended target. You will have symbology on the HUD which tells you when to release the bombs in order to strike a specified point, which in this case will be the sensor point of interest. So, first thing we'll do is we'll dive quickly into the DSMS, the DSMS, because this is our first time actually using it. So I'm going to bring up the DSMS on the left multifunction display here, and you can see that we're currently in Nav Master mode, and we're in the weapons profile labelled Weapons Off. If we go into Profiles at the top left here, you'll see we have two profiles, Weapons Off and Mark 82. By default, the system will create a profile automatically, a default profile for each weapon that you have on the aircraft. If I go back to the stat page, you can also create manual profiles. So you can either pre-plan your attacks and have a series of different profiles for each attack, and these profiles can actually be for different weapons or even the same weapon. You can have multiple profiles for the same weapon but doing different types of release. Or you can create an ad hoc manual profile by simply from the main DSMS page, the stat page, selecting hardpoints that you want to use. And you'll see that you'll automatically get a profile that is labelled M/ and in the name of the weapon, M standing for manual. So here's an ad hoc manual profile where I just have two of the pylons selected. It's going to drop singles with nose and tail fusing. If I go into the profile page, I can actually edit this manual profile and change settings like the type of release. So singles, pairs, ripple singles or ripple pairs, and back to singles again. And then we've got the fusing, nose and tail, nose, tail, or back to nose and tail again. And in the mode CCIP or CCRP at the bottom right here. So that's a manual profile. If I made changes here, I would have to hit the save button, which is currently flashing. Actually, I'll do that just now, and you'll see that it hasn't created any new profiles, but in kind of inverse video here, we have a manual profile showing, and if I go back to stat, it will once again show that profile. And if I look up on the HUD, you'll see that we have that profile confirmed here, manual Mark 82, and that's a CCIP profile. It also confirms here that we're currently in manual release mode. Now, when you're dropping the bombs in CCIP mode, it's possible to be in manual release or to be in a consent to release mode. Now, manual release means that when I put the CCIP pipper on the target and I press and hold pickle, the bombs will come off, no matter what. If I set up a consent to release mode, what the system will do is effectively do an ad hoc CCRP mode. So I would put the pipper actually in the consent to release modes is actually stuck at the bottom of the HUD. I place it over the intended target and I push and hold pickle, and I can then actually immediately pull out of my dive. The weapons will not come off at that time though. It will go into a CCRP mode where I have to align the aircraft with a steering line, and depending on which of the two modes for consent to release I'm in, it will then release once the conditions are met. Those two modes are 5mm. So basically, if my steering is accurate within 5 mils of deviation, then the bombs will come off. The other mode is called 3/9, and that just means when the target passes the 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock position from my pipper, the bombs will come off. So it won't take into account how much lateral deviation I have. Obviously, the 5mm mode is more accurate, but it's more demanding on you accurately flying the attack. So, let me show you how you get to those modes, by the way. So, if I put the IFCC into test, so I get the menu, let me just shift the view down so I can see the top. Straight away you can see the top option is CCIP consent option, and it defaults to off. If I use the data rocker, I can put it into 3/9 or 5mm. For our first release, we're going to leave it off and do a completely manual release. So there you go. Let's reset for a moment, and then I'll get set up with the different weapon profiles. Okay, I've reset the camera and we're looking at the Dismas page again. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get rid of this manual profile that we had. I'm going to go back into here. You can see there is now no manual profile. You can only ever have one of those at a time. So what we're going to do today, we're going to remove this default profile from the cycle of weapons profiles that we have in the HUD. So the thing to note is you've got these on selectors here, and you can toggle profile on or off. Note that when a profile is on, then if you have the HUD as the sensor of interest, as we do right now, we can see that because we have an asterisk, pressing the DMIS left and right will take us through the profile. So you can see I'm currently weapons off. If I go DMIS right, I'm now in Mark 82. If I go DMIS right again, I'm back in weapons off. So you have like a carousel of weapons profiles. We're going to remove this default Mark 82 profile because we're now going to make some different profiles to use so that we can see how that works. So if I go back to the stat page, you have to start with a manual profile to create a new profile. So I'm going to take stations 5 and 7 here, and we can see that they have Mark 82's single on each of these stations. So I've got those two stations selected. I can go into profile, and you'll see that we have this option on the left here called new. All we have to do now is type in what we want that to be called. So I'm going to say 82, and I'm going to say IP for CCIP. So with that in the scratch pad, I simply click new. I've now got a new profile called 82IP. I'm going to set that to ripple singles, nose and tail fusing. Ripple quantity, I'm going to press 2 and have that in the scratch pad and enter it into the quantity. And you could enter a default spacing. I'm going to leave it... Actually, no, I'll make it a little bit tighter than that. Let's make it 60 feet, just a little bit. And mode is CCIP, that's of course what we want. And I'm going to hit save. That profile now exists, 82IP, and it's selected on. That means that it is in the carousel, which is exactly what we want. We could clear the profile by clicking here to delete it, or we can view the profile and it will take us back into these settings. Now you have some settings in the middle here as well. These are standard kind of profile settings down the right. In the middle you have more complex settings. If I click change settings down here, we can now edit these as well. So you've got your escape maneuver. Currently it's set to climb. It can be climb, it can be turn, it can be a level turn, or it can be none. We're going to set it to climb. I think this actually determines some information about when the brake X appears. Desired time of flight, you can actually enter a number of seconds that you want the bombs to spend in flight. This will determine things like release queuing and so on. We're not going to cover that today. Minimum altitude, I am going to set a minimum altitude today because that will actually show a brake bracket down your fall line, so you get an indication of when to expect to have to pull up. I'm going to set a minimum altitude of 2,000. We do not want to descend below 2,000. You then also have adjustments for, it calls it right, but negative numbers here would be left, and up and down. This would be something that you would do in the real aircraft if you know that your particular aircraft is slightly bent, or it tends to drop X number of feet left or right. In the sim, you don't really need this. The eject rack velocity, I think this is the same kind of thing. This is an adjustment that you might make. And you can also set a rack delay. I don't know why you would do that either. So I would ignore these settings down the right. The ones down the left are really the only ones you're going to touch here. So we're going to hit save, and that's now completely saved as a profile. Now if I go back to the stat page, I'm going to go ahead and select some new pylons. It defaults to weapons off when you deselect all the pylons. We're now going to take pylons 4 and 8. They're also Mark 82s. We're going to go profile, and this one will be our CCRP delivery. So I'm going to put into the scratch pad 82R CCIP. Okay, for constantly computed release point, we're going to click New. We now have a new profile here, and this one will also be ripple singles, nose and tail, ripple quantity of 2, spacing of 60 feet. And in this case, we're going to flip the mode to CCRP and hit save. So we now have an 82 IP and an 82 RP profile. Excellent. Going to go back into the 82 RP profile, and again, we're going to change settings, and we're going to enter 2000 as a minimum altitude for this one as well. This will be a level delivery, so the likelihood of us actually hitting that is pretty much nil. So I'm first going to demonstrate a CCIP delivery with manual release, a CCRP delivery, and then we're going to make a manual profile where we will do a CCIP delivery with consent to release, and I'll demonstrate what that looks like. The last thing that we need to think about is our altitude source. Yeah, I'm going to go DMIS left just now, so we can see we've got our 82 IP profile, and we're in manual release. By default, the altitude is coming from the steer point you have selected. We currently have steer point 0. Target is actually closer to steer point 1, so I've pressed DMIS up to get number 1, and you can see, if I move the camera a little bit, altitude source is currently DTS. That's generally what we're going to want. If you hit the data rocker, you could set a manual altitude, or the select will flip between DTS and a manual altitude. In this case, we're going to leave it DTS. That's what we're looking for here. Okay, so with all of that done, actually, this looks wrong. This looks wrong. Why? Oh, okay, I guess it's showing us all of the other profiles that have that same weapon type. Is that what it's doing? Let's see here. Yes, okay. So it's confirming to us that it's going to drop those. If I go right again... Okay, I'm a little bit confused. Yeah, the ones in white are the ones that are going to drop. That's the thing that's the main thing here. Cool. Anyway, I'm going to center down on the heads-up display here so that we can see the symbology nice and clear. We're going to come out of active pause, and we're going to dive towards the target. Target is in this area here, so we need to get a bit lower. We're quite high right now, and a bit closer into the target. What I'll do is I'll bring you back once we're a bit closer. Okay, you rejoin me. I'm approaching the target now. One last thing to note, you can see here, this is the minimum altitude bracket. As that makes its way down to the pipper, that means I have to pull up. I also have a gun cross, so in this mode we could actually employ the gun at the same time. So dashed line means that the pipper is currently below the bottom of the HUD. Solid line now means the pipper is being displayed. So we're going to hold about here and wait until the pipper is on. I'm going to pause here. You can see that the bracket is making its way down the line. We've got range unwinding, and once this reaches the triangle, we're going to get our brake cue, but you can see we're very, very close to where we want to be. I'm going to place this pipper on the target, and I'm going to pull the pickle button. I'm going to hold it, and I have to hold it until all weapons are off. You can't just tap it. And then we're going to do an immediate climb maneuver, because that's what we programmed into the system. One thing to note is the pipper, when you're in a multiple release like we are just now, we're doing ripple singles, the pipper will always be the middle of where the stack of bombs will land. So I'm going to actually place it in between these two vehicles, and we'll see what we get. Okay, let's try this. Okay, weapons are away. I'm pulling out. And down come the bombs. Let's see how accurate we were. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. We actually destroyed 3 of those vehicles like that. That was nice. Something else to note is that you do have a time of flight indicated here. So at the time of release, it would have told me how many seconds to expect. So, excellent. That worked quite well. For our next trick, we're going to get eyes on target using the TGP and set a SPI so that we can actually do a CCRP release. Now, I happen to know that waypoint's elevation is completely wrong, so that's not going to work straight off the bat. But let's go ahead and switch profiles. I just hit Dismiss right, and you can see that I've got 82 RP, and it's in a 5mm consent to release. So the thing to note with CCRP is that by default, the bombs will not come off unless you're quite accurate with your steering. So, anyway, let's come around here, and actually I'm going to pop the targeting pod back into a snowplow. That might actually be the best thing to do here. Yep, there we go. We're going to come around, get our eyes on target. Oh, actually, there we go. I can see the smoke. Target's over here somewhere. Okay. Okay, so we know that we want to be about here. I'm going to press Team forward short, then Team forward long. We now have a target. Let's pause for a moment and take a quick look at the symbology we have here. We now have the steering line. What we want to do is we want to fly so that we have the flight path marker on the steering line, in effect. At the time of release, a circle will start making its way down that line. As it intersects the pipper, we want to be pushing and holding pickle, and the bombs will come off. Pretty standard setup. And it is in 5mm mode, so it will fail to release if we're not steering accurately enough at the time of release. There we go. Time to release is coming down. Bombs are off. Let's see how accurately we manage to do that. Now, of course, CCRP is generally going to be a less accurate style of attack than CCIP, especially from higher altitudes. You can see there my bombs were a little bit off of target, but we actually set all those trees on fire, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, we did that drop at about 5,000 feet. Obviously, the lower we can do it and the closer into the target, the more accurate it's going to be. Okay, let's do our final release type. We're going to do CCIP once more. But this time, we're going to change the CCIP consent mode. So we're going to go to... Let's do 5mm for this one. Like I said, 3-9, the target would have to pass left or right of the pipper, but it doesn't matter how close it is. Whereas in 5mm, it must be within 5mm in order for the bombs to come off. So let's put the radar... let's put the HUD back into its normal mode. Let's cycle all the way back to... weapons off, and with weapons off mode I'm going to manually select pylons 5 and 7. You can see we're now in a manual mode for pylons 5 and 7, and it's defaulted to CCIP, so we're good to go, although it's set for singles. So let's jump into that profile, and once again we're going to ripple off 2 bombs. That makes it more likely that we'll get those hits. Save, all done, back to stat page, and we are happy with that. So, let's center on the HUD again, disengage the autopilot and make our way round. You see that right now we don't have anything at all showing up on the HUD. Once we get closer into the target, we need to be nose down, I think it's more than 3 degrees, in order to start getting the symbology. Where is this target? Oh yeah, target's in sight. So anyway, you see that with nose up, we have no symbology. If we dive down and put our nose down, we are going to get some symbology. And what we need to do is put that pipper on the target, press and hold pipper, and then we can immediately pull out. We can do our exit maneuver at that time. So before doing that, I'm going to get some altitude as we fly towards the target, because I want to have enough altitude that I can face the target for a period of time, put the pipper on, but then we can actually make our escape maneuver while continuing to hold pipper, and the bombs will come off once we have the correct solution. So you can do it while still diving, but not necessarily as steeply, or you can do it in level flight, or you could even be climbing. So you could almost kind of dive toss your bombs in this mode. So we're going to bring our nose down again and get pipper on target. We need to be quite far nose down for that to happen. Yeah, we're going to need to be closer in than this. So I'm going to continue climbing. We'll get a bit closer and get a bit more altitude. That's 2 miles to the target and 6,000 feet. Let's give it another go. Yeah, there's the pipper. I'm going to walk the pipper on now. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to go push and
Pull up,
hold.
pull up.
And I don't know if the weapons came off. They did not. Oh no, actually they did. They did come off. Okay, interesting. And I did actually see an explosion somewhat close. The problem was the time of flight was so short that I didn't actually have time to see what it was doing. You would probably normally do that from a higher altitude, but there you go. That was CCIP with the 5mm consent to release mode engaged. So, I hope you all enjoyed that. Just went over the basics of dropping the Mark 82, although this would apply to any of the unguided bombs, cluster munitions, or even the high drag bombs. The symbology would be correct for all of those. So yeah, I demonstrated creating profiles, having manual profiles. We did drops in CCIP with manual release, CCIP with consent to release, and CCRP. I hope you all enjoyed that. Fly safe, and I'll see you next time.